with 80% of folks, if you just have a belief in a higher power, whatever that is, whatever that belief is, that decreases the potential for depression 80%.
Wow.
Why are we not talking about this?
Hey friends, my name is Gabby Rosalie, and this is the Crucial Conversations podcast, a platform dedicated to self-fulfillment and breaking the cycle of wasted potential. Using the tools of perspective, knowledge, wisdom, and awareness, I, with the help of qualified expert guests, share free insight and proven strategies that lead to all forms of success. If you are ready to start investing in yourself and living the life of your dreams, because I promise it is possible for all of us, you came to the right place. Together, we will help each other level up and have the crucial conversations necessary to do so. Welcome back to the Crucial Conversations podcast, everyone. I am very eager to have you all here to tap into this conversation today. I think that it's going to be really, really profound, and I'm very excited to get into it. We're going to be talking about relationships, attachment styles. We're going to be talking about psychotherapy and a specific branch of psychotherapy called Brainspotting. And to do this with me, I have guest Cherie Lindberg. And Cherie is a seasoned transformational coach. She's a speaker, advisor, and psychotherapist with a completed doctorate. She's been a psychotherapist for over 20 years. She's worked with complex trauma and is now working with healers on high performance using brain spotting and parts work models. She's trained in eye movement desensitization and reprocessing psychotherapy, imago relationships therapy, internal family systems therapy, and safe and sound protocol, which is polyvagal theory. Her background is in attachment and developmental trauma, and Cherie has touched a lot of people's lives, and she's a beacon for possibility for us all. She has also founded the Elevated Life Academy, as well as a nonprofit institute, and has created several developmental trainings for the Brainspotting community. She's dedicated to guiding healers, leaders, and high performers in embracing their life's purpose. And with a focus on personal flourishing, Cherie helps individuals highlight their unique abilities and contribute positively to the world. So given her mission statement, I resonate with her wholeheartedly, and I'm very excited to hear more from her. So Cherie, thank you so much and welcome to the show.
Gabby, thank you so much for reaching out, and thank you for this opportunity to share our missions, right? We both vibe at the same level and want to be able to share this information with folks. So thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. So I mentioned a little bit in the intro there that we were going to be talking about this branch of psychotherapy called Brainspotting. We're going to be talking a little bit about attachment styles and communication in relationships and awareness of self that helps to cultivate awareness of other. But I want to start out with a general question for you, Cherie. What is a piece of advice that you would give to the younger generation, knowing what you know now, where you're at in life at this point? What would you advise for the younger generation if you could?
Well, first of all, I know there's a lot of information out there about shoulds and shouldn'ts and what you should do and what you shouldn't do. And if I had to do it all over again, I would have really surrounded myself with people that helped me follow my heart. And so that's what I would share, is that you can't go wrong if your heart is leading. And I know some folks may say, well, you really have to have your brain and your thinking leading. And I would say for myself, it's the exact opposite, that love and kindness and compassion lead a lot of my choices. And I wish I would have had the confidence when I was younger to let that happen. So that's what I would say.
It's funny that you just said that, because I had a meeting with my personal coach, and we work a lot with the spirituality in my business and my purpose, connecting to my passion and my heart. And today's session was on the heart-brain connection. And we were really, really reviewing how to listen to heart overhead, because I'm a person who tends to intellectualize everything. So I think it's very important to know that in yourself, but also surround yourself with those people. So I love that. All right. I want to give a general definition as to what psychotherapy is, because I feel like it's a term that's kind of thrown around and some people may not have ever heard of it before. So I want to give you the floor to describe a little bit about what you do, but also the entire industry of psychotherapy.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think psychotherapy can get a really bad rap because of the word psycho in the beginning of it, right? So there's stigmatization still, unfortunately, that is still out there. But what psychotherapy is, if just shorten it to therapy, it can be not only deep healing for someone that has experienced a trauma, but it also can categorize personal growth.
Mm.
So it just depends on, it's a continuum and where people want to go, in their lives. Speaking for my own journey, I started out with psychotherapy because there was a lot of developmental wounds that as I became an adult, I became aware of that I needed to heal so that I could see the world in a more positive way. And then once I worked on all of that, it just continued into my soul's evolution and growing and personal growth. So that's kind of the continuum. So, I meet my clients where they're at and basically what they need at the times. Some folks are going to need more therapy,
Yeah.
and some folks have done that work and they're ready to do more of the personal growth aspect.
Very interesting. So now that you have found your niche in this brain spotting type of pillar and under the umbrella of psychotherapy, tell me a little bit about what brain spotting is and how you guide your clients through that.
Yeah. So brain spotting, we have a tagline, where you look affects how you feel. And it really does. Brain spotting scientifically aligns with what we know about neuroscience and how our brains and body process information. And so if I am thinking of something that was very hurtful or traumatic, when I'm 55-year-old now, but let's say I'm thinking of a trauma that happened when I'm 5 years old. And when I think of it, I catch my breath here. I can find a spot in my visual field that connects to that feeling. And as I'm looking over here mindfully on this spot, I can reprocess how that memory got laid down in my brain and body. So it's very developmental.
Wow.
We can go back as far as we need to. And it connects and harnesses this deep part of ourselves that everyone has that our system strives towards healing. And so it's a natural process that we all have inside of us. And brain spotting, finding that spot, we can harness that. And then what the client does is they go inside and they watch themselves watching themselves, which sounds kind of like, whoa, but
yeah,
we're watching what's happening inside. So we're watching our thoughts, we're watching our feelings, we're watching our body sensations. And over time, we're reprocessing these old memories that no longer serve us. I jokingly say to my clients, and this is going to date me, of course, but I'll say, we're going to give you an upgrade from a VHS tape to a Blu-ray DVD. So I jokingly, use that as a metaphor, but it gets us to be updated to our current reality instead of these old files that live back there.
That's incredible. What I think is very cool about it, and as I was doing a little bit more research on your work and some of the missions that you guys are leading currently, you're connecting science and spirituality, and you're taking this holistic approach from, okay, we're going to analyze what's really going on in the brain, but then we're going to connect that to what's going on in the heart and in the spirit, and use that to cultivate this room for expansion of soul and this healing process that all of us are here, like you said, and wired to carry out. So I'd like to talk a little bit about this idea of bridging science and spirituality, because
Sure.
I think that as we come into, new age, new earth, and people are starting to tap in a little bit more, the biggest, I think, hindrance for some of the individuals that have not yet gravitated towards an openness to some of these concepts is the science of it, and they think it's woo woo and it's all talk, and it sounds really nice to say listen to your heart, but what does that even mean, and is there any evidence to support that? So I would love to hear from you about your bridge between science and spirituality, and how this practice really helps to facilitate that for all people, whether they believe in certain things or not.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to this, because you're absolutely right. We, as a society, we label things when we're fearful or we don't understand. And so woo woo is one of the labels, that is out there. And so we actually have a video. My colleague and I work on this together. Her name is Heather Corbett, and she's a spiritual advisor. And we work on this together because we want to put the science in the woo. We're
Yes.
tired of all of this secrecy and people whispering. It's like, oh, don't tell anybody, but this is what happened to me, right? People are having these experiences and they need a place to be able to communicate safely about them. And so we want to create that safety. And so we want people to know that spirituality is in the brain. And Lisa Miller wrote the book, The Awakening Brain. And in there, she talks about how her science that she has done shows that with 80% of folks, if you just have a belief in a higher power, whatever that is, whatever that belief is, that decreases the potential for depression 80%. Wow. Why are we not talking about this, right? I mean, COVID really did a number on our culture and our world. We were already brewing, and I would say COVID just accelerated disconnection, reactivity. I would say hate, disconnection with people, with our loved ones, all those kinds of things. And so it's taking us in the wrong direction. And so what I want to speak about is, none of us are getting out of here alive, right? Yeah. We're all here in this grand experiment called humanity and being on the earth. And I want to live my best life, and I want to support others and living their best life. And part of that is understanding yourself. And spirituality, I'm open to it's belief systems. It's also what connects you to your higher self, what connects you to your higher power. And I don't define those things. My clients define those things. They get to discover and explore what those things are for themselves. And I just want to highlight the fact that, for many people, spirituality is different than religion. Some have them connected and some folks have them very separate. And, and for me, they're separate. Like, I do believe in a higher power. I'm still exploring those belief systems, myself. I kind of, there's that song out there, a little bit of, it's just like a little bit of Buddhism, a little bit of, I've got some Catholic conditioning, of course. Yeah. I've got, so I've got a little bit of all of these things. And I do believe in a higher power. But as far as that goes, like, I'm still exploring myself. And so I just wanted to let people know that this is in your brain. It's in the midbrain. That's where it is housed, and that it's inherent in all of us. And I really do believe we all have pieces of divinity inside of us. And so wanting to speak to that and give a safe place where people can explore that and define those things for themselves, but also add the science, in here, what we know.
And to kind of go a little bit deeper into this connection to self, I want to talk about this practice and how it can reveal the power of your intuition and connecting to your heart. Because, you've always heard the saying, like, trust your gut feeling, or, oh, this just doesn't feel right. This vibe isn't great, or I don't like this energy, And I do believe that when you have those feelings, you are connected to your intuition, you are connected to your heart. And so I'd like to hear how your practices and psychotherapy in general really can help to connect you with your higher self and with your intuition.
Boy, that we could spend a lot of time on this one, because this is, again, I want everyone to know who's listening, like, these are my opinions, and you're welcome to take what you like and leave the rest. So,
absolutely.
this is personal opinion. What I think happens to a lot of folks that I've spent time with over the last 20 years, helping support them through whatever they're going through, is that, we are brought up in this culture and conditioned in certain ways into shoulds and should nots. And oftentimes we have to let go of who we truly are to fit in and belong, or to just be safe.
Yeah.
To be a human being in this world today, for many folks, is very traumatic. And so when they come in and they're working with me, we're trying to help them regain their sense of self, regain the resiliency that's in there, but help them, connect into that and help them feel empowered to be who they really are, regardless of what society or what others have said they should or should not be. And that's an exploratory discovery, process. And pleasantly, a lot of folks start to discover who they really are, and they feel this liberation and freedom as they're healing these old wounds based on what people are saying they should have been or how they should be. And it never fit. It never fit. And now that they're starting to learn to accept themselves and love themselves, they start to find their own people. They start to find people that resonate with them, that they weren't able to find, when they were younger. And so watching people be liberated from those constraints and watching them grow into who they're meant to be and evolve, right? Evolve into the soul, who they are. I get to watch that. It's a privilege to sit and hold space for folks during that process.
Yeah. So how would you guide someone to be more open to listening to their heart? Like if you're dealing with someone like myself who has a tendency to analyze things and process everything through the mind logically, how would you advise someone to connect more deeply with their hearts?
Well, first of all, I recognize the fact that you're conditioned to do everything through your head. I mean, and you and millions of people in this culture, right? And so if you are wanting to explore how to do that and start to come into your heart, you got to come into your body. So we're going to start with helping you be in your body. We'll start with some exercises around how do I do that? What does that feel like? Discover, okay, why did I leave my body to begin with? What was the conditioning and the experiences that moved me out of my body and instead focused on my head? So we explore all those kinds of things. And then I use brain spotting and parts work to help you go inside and discover all those experiences that blocked you from being both in your body. Because what we do in brain spotting, it basically is helping folks regain the ability for their brain and body to communicate. Oftentimes the body has been shut off, and we're just these talking heads because we don't want to be in here. But just like what Brene Brown talks about, if you block out feelings, whether it's a negative feeling, then you block out the possibility of joy and wonder and awe as well. So we want to recapture the full range of feelings and help people, but they have to learn how to do that because they've been conditioned to get out of their body and just be in their head. So we first start where you're at, teach you how to be in your body, and then we'll use brain spotting and parts work for you to go inside and watch yourself and start to discover, okay, how did this get this way? What are some of the stuck responses or the stuck conditioned habits that have me being up here instead of flowing through mind and body connection?
Very cool. And I know that I was just referencing the coach that I'm working with, and the beginning of the program was really, it's kind of broken up into mind, body, and spirit, and then the interconnectivity of all of them. And so the beginning of it was really getting into the body and kind of analyzing, like, do you feel grounded in your body? And like, some practices that you can engage in that may be as simple as stretching, or, you might be more into like yoga or qigong or into the meditations and the things that really allow you to become aware of your bodily sensations, because what I have come to find, and thankful to many mentors who have helped guide me to this understanding, the body is such a wise system, and it has so
Mhm.
much intelligence like flowing through its, all of its inner webbings and workings. And so,
Mhm.
it's a profound informational system that we don't often tap into. And so, I've also started to get more into like trusting certain sensations in my body, and also being
Mhm.
curious about what's going on in different areas, and what
Mhm.
emotions is this bringing, or is this sensation bringing up. And I think that helps a lot to get curious for me
Mhm.
personally.
Mhm.
Of course, that all comes from and stems from this awareness, right? So you have to be able to meet yourself on a level playing field of like, you're going to be honest, you're going to be transparent, and you're going to be curious about what's going on. And you have to open your eyes to that before you can ask the questions. But yeah, I think that is a very important component to this process. And everybody starts at different
Absolutely.
places too.
Right. And sometimes we have to start with helping people with their fear response, right? Because if you're working with somebody who's been highly traumatized,
Mm.
you have to start there, and you have to work with helping them, overcome the fear so that they can even be comfortable with going, inside their body. And what you are talking about, Gabby, is really a lot of ancient wisdom that's been
Yeah.
around for a very long time, but
Yep.
Western culture has poo-pooed it, called it woo-woo. And now we're discovering, oh, you know what? They knew something.
Yeah.
There's some ancient wisdom here, and there's reasons why they did some of the things that they did. Yeah.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll say about this conditioning, I did an online course. Robin Sharma, he had a book out, The Hero's Journey, and or it might not have been The Hero's Journey, but something with hero in the title. Anyways, he talks in the beginning of one of his modules about this golden Buddha that is at the center of all of us. And it's this
Mm.
ancient legend of a tribe that had a golden Buddha, and over time it had accumulated a lot of rust and dirt, and it looked pretty dirty, definitely didn't look golden, and their entire city got pillaged and everything was stolen, but they didn't touch this golden Buddha because it was covered in all this dirt and this rust, and they had no idea what was at the core was this golden Buddha. And
Mhm.
so, after the next morning, everything's gone, it's in shambles, but they realize this golden Buddha is still here, so they clean it off, and they're able to bask in its beauty and remember it in this awe that it is, and it never stopped being this golden Buddha. And so that's kind of what these layers and this conditioning, to me, it helps to paint that picture. It really looks like, is like,
Yes.
how we grew up and our experiences and the beliefs that we formed, they're really separating us from this resilience that you talked about, our golden Buddha, because we have been conditioned. And for me personally, like I know that there are fears and limiting beliefs that I have to let go, because in my past, that's what I was told and that's what I experienced worked. Like that was
Yep.
successful for me. And so
Yep.
I'm trying to make sense of the future by interpreting my past experiences. And well, I did it this way, and I had to hustle and grind, or I had to run away, or I had to be small, and it worked in the past. So this is what's going to work. But, really like shedding that and then getting back to that golden Buddha, I think is just so powerful.
Oh, that's a beautiful story, and I would completely agree with what you're saying. Having the opportunity to go inside and recognize, you're absolutely right. We all have this beauty and this wisdom inside of us. It's just a matter of, can somebody hold space for us so that we can go in and discover that? With
Absolutely. Holding
curiosity.
space.
Yeah.
Yes. Holding space is so important. And people, I guess some people too, they're like, what does that even mean? And for me personally, like my definition of holding space is just accepting others, meeting them where they're at, and
Yes.
delivering a sense of like compassion and understanding. Whether or not you can relate to an exact experience, you are creating the space that like you're there to listen, and you are seeking to understand and also
Mm-hmm.
empower, because I think that's a really important part of this healing process, is that you're going to applaud people for being brave enough to take that step and go into that. And you're really just, it's like this container of like this ether that you're like, okay, come swimming in here, like I've got you, you're in my arms.
Yeah, and I would add, these are a little bit more psychobabble terms, but I would add, holding space also means attuning to another.
Mm.
For me to be able to sit in a regulated state, and you are the complete focus, And it's all about you, Gabby. It's not about me. I'm attuning to you. I'm really, discovering who you are as an individual, and your central nervous system will feel that. So then you
Absolutely.
can borrow my central nervous system to regulate yourself and then go deep inside yourself to explore the beautiful caves and the jewels that are in there.
Yes. And the fact that you mentioned your nervous system will be able to feel it. I think that is another component of this bodily wisdom, is that like we can feel when we are in a high vibrational state or surrounded by those other people or things that are going to make us feel this way. And it's that safety. And, I think too, something that I'm very, very interested in and have actually been feeling called to learn more about and potentially facilitate is authentic relating. And I love the practice because that's exactly what you're doing, is you are attuning and you are seeking to understand. And I think that those scenarios where all eyes are on you and everyone is listening and you're not worried about being interrupted, you're not worried about being like questioned or put down, or, it's so empowering because there is no other goal than to literally just share your experience. You don't have to be right. You don't have to give a bunch of details as to why you think this way or why you interpreted things this way. It's just, this is your experience. And that's really, really cool. And it's important.
Right. And so we're talking about, kind of the end result of, okay, we know about our conditioning, we work on it, we try to heal ourselves of our wounds and so forth, and then this beauty comes out of co-regulation, being able to hold space for another. And prior to all of that, because I know you wanted to talk about attachment styles, so attachment styles are our conditioning. They are our conditioning. They start with our experiences with our caregivers that were around us when we were children. And if you're fortunate enough to have caregivers that were very regulated, they had their own, parents that loved and cared for them and were able to be regulated. Beautiful. Unfortunately, there's a high percentage of us that did not have that we can't be regulated because our parents, were not regulated. And this isn't about bashing parents.
Absolutely.
It's about generational transmission of how our central nervous system showed up through the generations, basically.
Absolutely.
And so there's different patterns to that. And then those dynamics. So let me get real specific about this. So if you were fortunate enough to have a secure attachment style is the brain starts to organize your experience around, I am lovable, the world is safe, I will be taken care of. That's wonderful. I wish that for everyone, right? But if you have an anxious or avoidant attachment, your brain starts to organize things more around, well, sometimes I'm lovable, sometimes the world is safe. An anxious attachment will respond to that by being very preoccupied in relationship and always wondering, is this the time I'm going to mess up and you're going to disconnect from me, right? Where an avoidant attachment has the same belief systems that it organizes around, but they dismiss relationships. So they avoid, they push away, they don't, they tend to have more of an angry, critical dynamic with their parent. And so they adapt, right? We all adapt as folks. And so they adapt by pushing away and denying that they have needs. And this happens before we're 7, right? So a lot of this is subconscious. And then we carry that with us through our lifetime. And it creates these core beliefs inside of us. And these beliefs, are not positive when you have insecure attachment. They tend to be, I'm not good enough, or the world isn't safe, and when you start to see the world through that lens, you have to adapt for survival, which is kind of what you were talking about, Gabby, is that, it worked in the past. I had to do that to survive. But now if I want to have really healthy relationships in the present, I'm recognizing, there's a disconnect. It's not working anymore. And so it all goes together. So I'm
Yeah.
hoping that transition was okay in explaining. I just wanted to make a connection.
1000%. And that was the next thing that I was going to talk about were these attachment styles, because again,
Yeah.
it goes along the same narrative of the conditioning and of the learning from our past. And then
Mm-hmm.
also the limitations and barriers and boundaries that then we have to learn to bring down again, that we have to learn to heal. And that is
Yeah.
a process, and it's not going to be a pretty one the entire time, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so I do want to talk a little bit about some of the characteristics of each of the attachment styles
Sure.
in adult relationships, and what you may be able to go a little bit deeper into relating from the developmental scenarios that may have
Mm-hmm.
contributed to that attachment style. And, you know, I think that when we think about attachment styles, we think about romantic relationships, because I feel like they show up
Mm-hmm.
really,
Mm-hmm.
really predominantly there. But I think that anxious attachment or avoidant attachment or secure attachment can exist in friendships. It can exist in
Yes.
professional relationships. It can really exist everywhere.
Yep.
And I'm curious, before we go into this big, broad question, do you think that people can occupy different forms of attachment styles in different areas of their lives?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And in fact, my doctorate was about brain spotting, how brain spotting is a tool. When people have come into my office, a lot of folks, because they have trauma, because I was a specialist in trauma, right? They would come in with insecure attachment or disorganized attachment, which is related to severe trauma in childhood. And we would do brain spotting, and they would shift and move towards a more secure attachment style. So there's a lot you can do. You know, it's not like a one and done kind of situation. If you are in a safer relationship where somebody is holding space for you, you're going to show up more secure because you feel safer, right? And this is also tied to polyvagal theory. You're going to be in the more physiological states of what is called ventral vagal, which is more prosocial. You'll be able to connect better when you're around somebody who shows up secure, who shows up safer. And so if you are in a situation, let's say you have a boss, let's talk about work. You have a boss who grew up in a very traumatic situation. They haven't done any work and they have disorganized attachment. If you have insecure attachment, it's going to show up more because it's going to get triggered more because of how the boss is showing up, right? So it's an interactive. This is the co-regulation piece. We can either help be each other's best healers, where we're helping each other co-regulate, or we're going to trigger each other, and we're not going to even realize we're triggering stuff from the past. We're going to think it's happening in the moment, and it is technically, but the belief systems and the conditioning that comes up is from the past. And this is where I talk about parts work, because these are parts of us that are stuck developmentally in the past that show up in the present, and we don't even realize that that's what's happening.
So tell me a little bit about the parts work that you do. So if somebody has an anxious attachment style and they're really, really struggling with this core belief that I'm not good enough, how do you use parts work to start to break down and then reprogram that belief?
Yeah, so we also use brain spotting. So we find a spot where they feel connected to the belief. So we connect in the body. We're very interested in where are you noticing this physiological reaction in the body when you tell yourself, I am not good enough. Wow. And so let's say it's in our chest, right? And so now we're on this spot. And as we are processing, oftentimes when we talk about like, I'm not good enough, they will either feel a sensation, or a lot of folks get visuals, and sometimes they'll see themselves in a memory when they're 3 years old, and mom or dad is yelling at them, or a different caregiver, grandma and grandpa, are telling them, or shaming them, and it happened repeatedly, so it got stuck in there. And so now we have this developmental age that is arrested. So let's say it started at age 4, where it happened repeatedly. And so we've got this trauma capsule that we're working with, and the person goes inside and does repair work with that part of them. So let's say I have a 4-year-old part that I'm connected with. I'm seeing her. She's getting yelled at by grandma, and grandma said that over and over again. And then mom and dad said it. So they're all these adults. And so then I feel all this shame coming in my body. And now the adult me goes in there and gets this little one and says, I'm so sorry that the adults there handled this way. That should not have happened. I've got you now. And then we can do all, it depends on the person, all different kinds of creative ways of repairing that and handling it the way it should have been handled, where there was loving, compassionate guidance instead of this reactivity that created shame.
Yeah.
And again, not to badmouth parents, grandparents, or whatever, but if they didn't learn how to guide, how would they do that for the child, right? But now as we're working on our own healing, and this is what I help people do, is I can guide them and then they can learn those tools. These are all skills you can learn. And then they can go and do this repair work inside themselves.
Absolutely. Well, it's so important to have somebody who holds your hand in scary areas, in, unknown areas, if you're open to that. And then a good mentor, a good coach is always empowering you to be able to do all of those things for yourself, because you don't want to create that codependence. You don't want to create you're only able to heal, or you're only able to succeed if you have me, if you have, my support. That I think that would defeat the entire mission, right?
Absolutely. And Brainspotting, that's why I love Brainspotting, because we stay out.
Yeah.
If the client's system is able to do that on its own, we just hold the space.
Yeah.
But when you get into more complexity of more developmental trauma and so forth, every once in a while, we call it planting a seed. I might need to go in and do a little bit of role modeling and then get out and then let the client's system do that on its own. And it's much more powerful when the client does it on their own, because it's inside of them and they are doing it. And so it helps them feel very empowered versus, because that's not my role. My role is not to fix anything. My role is to support the client in building these skills.
Absolutely. So we were talking a little bit about inner child. We were talking about adult version, coming in, back in, healing that. I want to talk about the layers of self, because you had a post that I really, really enjoyed about the layers of self: authentic, emerging, masked, and little. So I would love to hear just a little bit about each of those layers and kind of how they show up in our day-to-day lives. So if you could break those down for us, and we can start wherever you would like, from little, or we can start at authentic.
Yeah. So the little, really, as you're talking, this is like the Buddha story, the golden Buddha that you're talking about, really. So we come into this world, we're so innocent, and, I wanted to keep that post as simple as possible for people to understand it. And so we come in, we're innocent, we're full of love. I mean, children are just amazing, right? And they're so inquisitive and so curious. And then life happens, right? Something happens to where all of a sudden we have to have a protective shell around that little self. And so those are our adaptations so that we can survive here, right? Or our conditioning to survive here. And then often there's layers of protection that happens on that little self, and it becomes the mask self. This is the one that we show society that keeps us safe so that we can belong. And we use that because we're not sure, are we safe with this person? Are we not safe? And we all have different layers of masking too. Folks that have experienced more trauma have more layers of masking, right? And as we make a choice to heal and look at these things because we want to evolve and we want to live the highest, best self that we can, we start to recognize, oh my goodness, I'm masked. Oh my goodness, there's this little one inside that lost its dreams, that was shut down because of everything that happened. And as we heal and we work on this, we can move more and more into authentic self and handle our fears. Where when we were younger, we had to mask, we had to put those layers on. for survival purposes.
Yeah.
But now as an adult, I can maybe take risks. I can say the thing, even though I know this is going to upset a friend. This is going to upset a partner. It's going to upset my boss. But I'm going to choose to be more authentic, because then that gives me freedom and that gives me liberation. Right. And so we take the whole thing with it. We're not just people pleasers. We're not just being masked and putting a false self out there. We are able to move into more authenticity. But it's something we all do. And until we're aware, I mean, there's a lot of folks out there that are walking around in a false self, a masked self, and are unaware of it.
Yeah.
They just like, oh, I did what my parents told me to do, or I did
Yep.
what, I was supposed to do. And I will admit that that's what I did.
Yep.
I didn't even realize this till I was in my 30s. I'm like, how did this happen? And then I started to explore, and I'm like, oh my goodness, no wonder. This is how all this happened, with all the trauma I experienced as a young person, not having anyone to guide me in how to be confident. I didn't have any of that support because my parents didn't have that support. So it's generational transmission as well. Can be another way that this all happens.
So how would you describe your feelings when you used to, or maybe sometimes you still do in certain scenarios, operate from your masked self versus how you feel when you're operating as your authentic self?
Oh my goodness. Yes. And it still does happen. I want people to know that this is a never ending process. It's not like, and I used to have my checklist, like I'm going to work through all these traumas and then I'll be good to go. And what I've realized is that it's a layered process in there, and I'll be doing this work the rest of my life.
Yep.
I was a little upset when I first realized that, because I'm like, oh man, but I'm enjoying it now because I'm curious. Right. But
that's great.
so I still, on occasion, will operate like I know I have a people pleaser part, and it's an automatic thing. And then I look back and I'm like, oh, I did it again, and then I have to sit with myself and go, okay, what are we going to do about this? Are we going to go back to the person and say, look, I didn't think that through, which I do a lot now. I'll come back and I'll say, this isn't working for me anymore. I didn't realize it at the time. I'm so sorry that this isn't, and so I will go back and make the change. And when I do that, I'm like, okay, we're making progress here, and it feels good in my body. And parts of me, the people pleaser, and other parts of me that, react, feel really good, because they're like, she's helping us. Like the most adult me, or my spirit, or higher self, whatever you want to call that, they start to trust, like, hey, she's got our back. We don't have to react out of the trauma responses anymore. And I learn to pause more before I react. And so the reacting part of our brain, I mean, that's developmental. That is our limbic system. So we're always working with the layers of our development. We're always working with the layers of our reactivity with limbic system. The more you heal, the more you have a pause button where you can choose how you're going to respond rather than react.
I love the pause button. And I think too that looking at how our beliefs are formed based on our experiences, it's like experiences, beliefs, and then thoughts. And so even if you find yourself reverting back to people pleaser habits, if you go in there and you create a new experience for yourself, one that is really, really embodying like your values and communicating your needs, and by doing that, you're creating a new experience. And like you said, talking to that people pleaser version of you, they're like, wow, okay, she's got us. You're creating a new belief as well. And then you're able to create new thoughts. And so, all of these layers, but you have the opportunity to create those new beliefs, especially when you act on your intuition in that case or scenario where you're creating that new experience.
Yeah. And what we're talking about too, I've been very, very fortunate. I have a partner this fall, it'll be 35 years that we're aware of all these things that we're speaking about. And then we have a dialogue process that we will come together when a reactive part of me or a reactive part of him, where we hurt each other or we're confused about something, we will come together and use this dialogue process to communicate so that we can start to understand and unravel this together. It's not just so my husband is my best healer because he lives with me 24/7, right? And I am his best healer. And we also trigger each other, right? Because we find each other based on our vulnerabilities, which whenever I leave this earth, like I want to say, okay, who was in charge of this? Who created this plan? But it does happen that way. I picked him because he triggered me, the way my parents would. And he has some habits and things like that. And I do too. But the good news is the two of us are dedicated to this work, and we can use the dialogue process to dialogue about it. And again, choose to respond rather than react.
Yeah. So that dialogue process is one of the final questions that I have pertaining to attachment styles. So if you are operating from an insecure attachment style, whether it's anxious, whether it's disorganized or avoidant, and you are in a relationship with someone who may trigger you a lot, can you just give a piece of advice or two as to how you may be able to facilitate more conscious communication, more compassionate communication, and trying to hold that space without always hopping into defense mode? Because I feel like that's where it stems from, right? Like we're protecting ourselves and our egos, and we feel threatened or like we're going to be hurt or that our needs aren't being met. And so we jump to this reactivity, to this defense mechanism that we all have, right? So what would you advise for communication in those scenarios?
Well, first of all, I would start with compassion, because you're going to need a lot of compassion for yourself, because having the awareness that, oh, when I get triggered, that's inside of me. That doesn't mean something's wrong with me, but the trigger is inside of me. And the trigger came from that conditioning. And then it creates stories that I tell myself, right? So what a lot of folks don't realize is when they get triggered, they're like, oh, you triggered me, you're the problem. We have a blame society right now that's getting in the way of deep connection. Absolutely. And so I would start with compassion, because you're going to need self-compassion to understand that, oh, it's inside of me. The trigger's inside of me. What is that inside of me? And then you're going to have to do some personal work so that you can find a safe way of communicating with a friend, a partner, a boss about it in a way that you feel safe, so that there can be some resolution, for it. But a lot of folks get really upset. They come in, I do a lot of relationship coaching. That's part of what I do. And they really blame the partner. And then I have to connect with both of them and help them see it isn't your partner. Your partner just happens to be the unfortunate person that triggers it. It's inside of you. And here's the thing. Your partner also has things inside of them that get triggered. And so when we can have an even playing field and go, let's be curious and discover these things so that both of you can learn to hold space and co-regulate with each other, so you can be each other's best healer instead of wounding each other over and over again.
Yeah.
And it's those are the directions that I take. Yeah. Yeah. It's very powerful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I often use, with a couple, I often use Brainspotting. I often use parts work. And then we teach them the dialogue so that they can say, well, when you do that, that reminds me of when I was 3 years old and my grandmother yelling at me and saying, you're not good enough or whatever. Right. So then the partner's like, oh my goodness, like compassion comes immediately. Like, I didn't intend for that to happen. Oh, now I understand why when I do that, you react that way.
Yeah. And just back to this idea of holding space, like facilitating that conversation and just being there to allow two people to come in with the intention of understanding, it's like you may not even play a huge role in the conversation, but knowing that you were the creator of this space of intentionality and compassion is pretty much the green light for, I feel like, both of the authentic selves of those individuals to come to light and be like, okay, we're here for this reason. Like, let's get to work. And sometimes that's all you need is that container and the intention, of course, and leading with love, because at the end of the day, it's you and your partner versus the problem, not you versus your partner. So yeah, I think that that's so beautiful. And I really appreciate all of the things that you're doing and that you were able to come on to the show and share all of your mission and all of your gifts with everyone today. So thank you very, very much. And I do want to give you an opportunity to lead others to any of your platforms that you're open to connecting with them on.
Oh, thank you so much for the opportunity, Gabby. And I just want to finish by saying, it is a privilege to witness dedicated souls coming into the office that want to reach their authentic self. So it's a beautiful process. It's messy. It's not always, it can be bumpy, but it's a beautiful opportunity to witness that. And Thank you also for the opportunity to be here. And you can find me on CherieLindberg.com. I do one-on-one coaching, consulting, business consulting. I'm also a Brainspotting trainer. And so there's trainings on there. And then Elevated Life Academy is a new launch this August. Elevated Life Academy. And what we're going to do is we're bringing healers from all over the world to share their wisdom on a community-based platform so that we can teach people how to live an elevated life, because it's all skills we all can learn. So thank you again for the opportunity to be here and to speak.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I will make sure to link all of that in the episode description. So guys, make sure that you check out the description and follow Cherie on all of these platforms and look into some more of her practices if this piqued your interest. Thank you guys so much. And I will see you next time on the Crucial Conversations podcast. Hey y'all, before you head out, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode, and most importantly, thank you for making the conscious decision to invest in yourself and expand your mind. By doing so, you are helping to elevate us all to live better lives. By showing up and emulating the things that you learned in today's crucial conversation, you are inspiring those around you. If you want to continue this domino effect, share this episode with someone that you want to help to unlock their maximum potential. And connect with me on Instagram at Gabby Rosalie Co. to share your valuable feedback and offer recommendations for what you'd like to hear in future episodes. I love you all. Keep shining your unique lights, and I will see you next time on the Crucial Conversations podcast.